Being well prepared for problems can be the difference between a trip ending and being another tale in a great adventure. The world is full of useful tips, hints and tricks to make problems preventable, and how we prep our bike is going to make a big difference with that. Now, it can make life a little boring. You're not going to have as many of those epic tales of rescue and adventure because you were ready, prepped and able to solve the problem. But generally, it is going to make your life a little easier. We can do this prep in a way where we are efficient too, so we don't have to carry the kitchen sink on the back of our bike. When I'm planning to ride somewhere more remote than, say, your typical enduro practice day, I like my bike to be ready and prepped to solve the common problems that I'm going to come across. That's the mindset, to be able to get yourself and your bike out of a situation after a problem has occurred. Those kind of showstoppers are broken cables, punctures, electrical problems, and things that can snap off your bike. With that in mind, where I'm going and how remote it'll be will play a really big difference. If I'm 5 kilometers from a road in the UK, I definitely do not need to carry the same things as being in the middle of the Simpson Desert in Australia. Your proximity to help, your riding company, how new your bike is, and how well looked after your bike is are all going to play a part here. So I'll work through this video going from the simple stuff to the most backcountry ready tips. Now, let's get into the non-negotiable essentials. I always start with a handful of cable ties. Cable ties, essential. These are one of humankind's greatest ever inventions. These things are incredible. They come in all kinds of forms and sizes, and I will not ride without them. They're on every one of my bikes. You can stash them in a variety of places, but I tend to stash them on the fork of my bike. 2 cable ties on the forks to hold them in place, and a handful of them does the trick. Next, we need a wedge of duct tape. This is going to ruin my set, but this is important. This stuff is right up there with cable ties in how useful and how important it is, and how you can MacGyver any situation. You basically can't have too much duct tape. As Lyndon Poskett once said, if you can't duck it, then it should be cast to one side. The glue on most duct tapes is amazing, so we can wrap it on something and then re-wrap it in our emergency situation. And this can be done anywhere really, but the mirror stalk is prime for this. A few careful laps around and we're done. Easy to access, good to go. Now, the multi-tool. Oh, the multi-tool is an essential. It doesn't need to be fancy, but having it as easy access is a godsend. I have been using the same one for about 8 years now. I got it for Dakar in 2015. It is a Gerber Suspension NXT. It feels pretty good quality for the price, and it has a dangerously chipped blade that I murdered opening a can of food. I find it gets used daily when I'm riding, from clipping cable ties to cutting things, to tightening camera parts and opening beers. I'll typically cable tie mine to the other fork leg behind the fairing. On adventure bikes, this is normally quite well protected from dirt and grime and still allows you quick and easy access. 2-part metal, JB Weld, Epoxy Repair, whatever you want to call this, this is my last essential small part that I try to carry with me whenever I'm on the bike. You don't need a lot of this, you're not going to use it often, but when you do use it, it will be an absolute savior. Because of the design, you can do a ridiculous amount with this, from patching engine cases to rebuilding clutch perches. If you haven't seen it before, it's a very simple product. It's 2 soft chemicals that you mash together and they turn into a hard metal-like substance that will bond to any hard surface, really. It can repair holes in cases, broken perches, and anything else metal that needs repairing. The bonus is that if you need it removed, it will chip off pretty cleanly with a hammer and a punch. Typically, I find a little stash place for it, like under the seat or in a quick access pocket on my panniers. Chuck it in a rubber glove because it's not the nicest stuff to handle either, so the glove keeps it protected and then protects you. Now that we have the basic trail problems solved, we need to deal with the ones that are a little bit bigger, the showstoppers, the things that have got the potential to genuinely leave you stranded in the middle of nowhere. Tire repair is number 1 on that list, and I almost never ride without the ability to repair a puncture on my own bike, even on the road. For this reason, I actually much prefer riding on tubeless tires to tubed tires because the repair admin is significantly simpler. The tools I need to carry are small, simple, and fixing repairs is quick and mostly painless. For that, I carry a tubeless repair tool from Rocky Creek Designs. You can get smaller kits like the Tip Top kit, but I like the tool how it folds up and is contained. I can't lose any of the bits, and for me that is a good thing. Alongside my Rocky Creek kit, I also generally carry this Rocky Creek moto presser pump that runs off 12 volt instead of a battery. Whether you opt for a 12 volt or a battery model kind of just depends on if you're willing to charge the battery model up. They do work super well now and can totally be relied upon. If you're on a tubed bike, you are going to need to be able to solve that. The tools to remove a wheel and a tube stashed somewhere. I like fitting things to the bike rather than in my panniers or carrying them on my person. And for this, removable cable ties are amazing. These things are like gold, so I'm gonna find a nice frame rail to mount my one tire lever to. This is also a good place for your little bit of duct tape wrap that we talked about, or a secondary wrap of duct tape. Now, one tire lever is enough. You will get the job done with this if you're patient and you have a little bit of practice. 2 tire levers is better, but 1 tire lever means you've got one less bit of kit to carry. The same goes for the tube. You can carry a repair kit if you want, they will do the job, but generally a spare tube is more reliable. You really only need a single front tube to get you out of trouble, and that can be hooked away somewhere on your bike. I've seen a few T7 owners stash them behind the screen to stop the clocks wobbling too. A Jumpstart solution, small jump leads or a jump pack. Either will suffice, and typically you can get them under the seat of your bike. Batteries die, and that is a real pain in the neck if you don't have a bike with a kickstart. Something like this Nocco is a really good option. They don't take up much space in your bag, and you really only need one between you if you're group riding. I will say that these are not always the cheapest. An Amazon special of potentially questionable quality will be £50, and this Nocco one is more like £150. If that's out of your budget, just get some small motorcycle-friendly jump leads, cheap and effective. They've worked for the last 50 years, and they'll work for you too. Chains. Chains are fallible. Now, in general, chains are super reliable. If you have a decent quality one on your bike and you look after it and it's not too tight, it's not very often that they break anymore, but they can. And I would say that that's a pretty essential thing for making your bike move forwards. We are getting into the realms of less essential now, but a small chain breaker and a spare link is gonna save your day. They take up minimal space, and depending on the breaker you've got, they can be stashed on the bike, on a subframe rail or the like. And so that brings us to the real backcountry mods, the little tips and tricks that are going to get you out of a really sticky situation and just do it in a very, very pleasant, easy way. These are the kind of mods that I would probably only do if I was headed to somewhere that was very remote or difficult to get parts in, and it's going to give you a real headache or potentially be mission critical or life critical if you don't do them. If you're headed into the middle of the Simpson Desert in the sand dunes and towing yourself out from a friend is going to be impossible, or you're riding alone, I would do these. If I was riding the Trans-Euro Trail in the Lake District in the UK, I wouldn't bother. Cables. If your bike has anything cable or wire, you are going to want a spare. In general, replacing clutch cables and throttle cables is an absolute nightmare of a job on most bikes, and doing that in the garage is way easier. To make this go smoother in the wild, fitting a spare cable alongside your original cable, tied in place with cable ties, is the answer. A little duct tape to cover the ends and stop the damage, some small cable ties to stop any flapping, and we're good. Clutch fixing. I recently covered this in the most controversial MiniTip Monday I made in a long time. For me, a solution to solving the clutch burnout problem is probably a good idea. I'd suggest that the more experienced you are at knowing what clutch abuse is, the less you probably need this, but some bikes have notoriously weak clutches. The CRF 250 and 300L is known for it, the F800 GS and the KTM 790 and 890 platform too. And if that's the case, having a way to help with that is really useful. That video gave some brilliant solutions in the comments as well as my own. Leather shoelaces, safety wire, washers that will fit under the clutch springs. These were all incredible suggestions from the comment section of that video. And between you and your group, I would at least carry some small washers that are likely to fit under the clutch springs of your bike and some safety wire. It is incredible what you can do with some safety wire. Personally, if my bike had a known weak clutch, I would carry a spare fiber or a stack of fiber plates and try and cable tie them somewhere on the bike. Behind the radiator fan is a favorite, but on this Suzuki that doesn't seem to be so easy, so behind the screen could also work. And there you have it, adventure ready. Now, a video like this works best when we fill the comments with great ideas, so I want to hear yours. What are the tips and tricks you do that I haven't mentioned? And otherwise, remember, life's better when you're riding.